All right, I have a great guest for you guys today to help me go through some of the biggest stories in the news. This is Libby Emmons from Post Millennial. Libby, thank you so much for joining me today.
Sure thing, Stephen. Thanks.
So, you are the editor in chief of Post Millennial.
Mhm,
Also, you work with Jack Posobiec, who's been on
mhm.
my show 4 or 5 times. I wanted to jump into this idea that the Democrats have put forward all of these people calling on Biden to resign,
Mhm.
saying, for the good of the country, for the good of the party, in order to beat Donald Trump, you must resign. How did the supposedly most popular, most elected president in history is now getting the most calls to step down and get out of the way? What are your thoughts on that?
I think what happened is they realized they couldn't beat Donald Trump at the ballot box, and so they did whatever they had to do to try and get someone in there who they did think could win. By hook or by crook, they will do what they have to do to maintain power. And that's really all this is about. If they thought Biden was, doing better in polling, if they thought that he could beat Trump despite his diminished mental capacity, they would have left him in. And I don't think anyone doubts that. But they got it into their heads that they could run Kamala Harris, the DEI vice president, and that's what they're doing.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is saying um, Kamala Harris has earned this nomination from the
Right?
grassroots up and
Right?
not from the top down, even
Right.
though it was Obama pushing Biden out, it was Nancy Pelosi pushing Biden out, and now Pelosi has endorsed her, Chuck Schumer has endorsed her. They don't do elections based off of what their people want anymore. They install candidates. They installed Hillary, they installed Biden. Now they're installing Kamala Harris, and yet they're the party that's worried about democracy. What are your thoughts on him saying that she earned this from the grassroots and not
Well,
from the
it's
top?
such, yeah, I watched that yesterday. It was Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, and they're out there saying that she earned it, that she's really qualified. Chuck Schumer was actually out there laughing, having a gay old time, inspired by Kamala Harris and her ridiculous cackle. And the two of them were out there just lying. I mean, it's so blatant and it's so absurd and insane, and it's hard to keep your cool when you're just lied to like that directly. This is a party that lies to us all the time. They say that men are women, and that's just such a lie as well. They say that reality is not what we can see and hear and touch and taste, but it's what they tell us it is. And that's the case here too. We all remember in 2020 when Joe Biden promised that he would run a black woman as his vice president, and we all said at the time, hey, maybe get someone who's qualified. If a black woman, if the most qualified candidate is a woman who is black, like go for it. That's great. But if not, pick the most qualified candidate. This is the second in command of the United States, the second in command of leading the free world. This is a hugely important position, regardless of how, you know, relegated to obscurity it often is in most administrations, right? It's still a key role. And he said that directly in 2020. Now they're telling us that she's not a DEI candidate. She wouldn't be a DEI president. We all know in 2020, she got maybe 3% of the polling when she was running the Democrat primary. They couldn't run her in a primary this year, or next, whenever it is. They couldn't run her because she would not get any percentage. Nobody wants her. Democrats don't want her. BLM doesn't want her. The American people just don't want Kamala Harris, and they are forcing her onto us, and they don't care what they have to say to do it, including these ridiculous lies from Jeffries and Schumer. Like you were saying, it's like how Biden always says that the economy is growing from the, what is it, bottom up and the middle out. Nobody even knows what that means, and it's totally a lie anyway. And then you have these guys saying that she has earned this nomination. She literally has done the opposite of earning it, right? Earning it is going out there, making your case to the American people, going from state to state, competing in Iowa, competing in New Hampshire, competing in all these primaries against opponents who have something to say. She hasn't been vetted. No one has seen what she can do. She hasn't done anything in the past 4 years. The couple of jobs that she was tasked with doing in the first place, like this whole border czar situation in March 2021, Biden said Kamala Harris is going to deal with the root causes of migration and tackle this border situation. She had a phone call with the Guatemalan president. Then they had a little meeting. She said that the root causes of illegal immigration to the U.S. are in part anti-LGBT, right? They prioritized LGBTQ asylum seekers. They did all this crazy stuff. They imported millions and millions of illegal immigrants. They're now preventing states from preventing those illegal immigrants from voting in the presidential election. And they are lying and saying she earned it. It's so clearly a top-down move.
Yeah.
It's how, do you think that Americans are we just going to get steamrolled again?
Yeah.
Are we going to let this happen?
Yeah. You brought something up that I read this morning. Black Lives Matter is actually condemning the Democrat Party for the way in which they've installed Kamala Harris. And it seems that they are distancing, saying, wait a minute, Black Lives Matter, Black lives didn't matter to Kamala Harris.
That's right.
When she was running the Justice Department of California, when she was keeping people in prison for longer periods of time in order to get cheap labor. Do you think that, we're told that the Black community is going to rally more than ever, and yet the supposed mouthpiece for Black voices is coming out saying, this lady's not Black and we don't want to be associated with her? Your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think that BLM is right in this case, right? Worlds collide. I'm agreeing with BLM on something. This was an undemocratic process. It is shutting out Black voters. It's shutting out white voters and Chinese voters and Asian voters and Hispanic voters. It's shutting out the American people. This was an elitist determination from the top of the party who said that we're going to have Kamala Harris, knowing full well that none of us ever wanted her, including, the Black Lives Matter contingent. When she was running in the primary in 2020, there was a large group of Black activists who were saying absolutely not Kamala Harris. She locked up more, Black people in California over random weed charges than anyone else. And they were infuriated that she was there. I mean, she even, I believe, if memory serves, she had even refused to let some men out of prison even after their terms were up because she wanted to keep them in there to do more labor or something like that. This is something I read, a little bit ago. I don't have all the details exactly, but I do remember that. So yeah, and also there's this perception among Democrats that Black voters are a monolith, that they're all going to vote exactly the same way. It's entirely racist to say that all Black people in this country want the exact same things for their lives or would vote the exact same way, regardless of background or region or education level or anything else that you could come up with as a way to, delineate between people in this country. And I find it appalling when people say that about women, like all women are going to vote the exact same way. All women are going to vote for, the pro-abortion candidate, as though we're all out here saying, like, let's kill more babies. That's just not, there's so many of us who aren't like that. But they don't care. They just don't care. They're just going to do whatever they have to do to maintain this power. And as I'm watching just the past few days of the Kamala campaign get underway, she is just spouting off lie after lie, and there is no one to check her on it. And the reason there's no one to check her on it is because the division between independent media outlets and the legacy outlets is so stark. It's very hard. If we're out here at the Post Millennial or Human Events, right? We ran an editorial the other day about all the ways that Kamala Harris is unqualified to be president. Is there a good chance that that's going to crack the barrier between independent media and legacy media? I don't know that there really is. It's very hard for the smaller outlets who are doing this work to say, like, your girl's lying. She's lying about Trump. She's lying about Project 2025. She's lying about Medicare. She's lying about education. She's lying about all of these things. But it's hard for that message to get through. And with the sort of like steamroll effect behind her, and all of these outlets now covering for Harris, like this Axios one this morning saying, she never was the border czar, which is absurd. I don't know how we're going to break through and reach out to the American people to say, hey, don't forget, these people are lying to you. Nothing has changed. They just put a different, it's just a different face on the same old lies. There's nothing new here. There's nothing new and exciting here.
Yeah.
Pay attention, everyone, you know.
Yeah, I mean, as a small journalist myself, it's so difficult to really break through. Even when you have like a really great story, you're at the whim of the algorithm and YouTube's decision on whether they want something promoted or not. You brought up a thought that no one's made me think. So you said something about skipping the Democrat process, and then you mentioned how terrible Kamala Harris did in 2020. Do you think that possibly their plan was for Joe to get past the primaries so that the American people wouldn't see how terrible she would do if there was an actual open presidential race in the Democrat Party? Because they blocked Marianne Williamson, they blocked Dean Phillips, thank you, and RFK Jr. But then, would Kamala have gotten past Iowa? She didn't the first time.
Nope.
Would she have gotten past New Hampshire? No.
No.
Would she have gotten past South Carolina? No. And so they carry her across, her under one arm and the nuclear football under the other. And they get her, as close to the finish line. And then Joe suddenly steps down and she's labeled the queen of the Democrat Party, the greatest thing since sliced bread. Do you think that there's any plausibility that they just carried her to a point where the American people can't participate in democracy?
I certainly wouldn't put those kind of machinations past the Democrat Party at this point. I do think that it's certainly possible. We had her coming out, September last year, saying that she would be ready to step in at any point. She's part of the cover up. We can't forget that. She interacted with Joe Biden over the past 3.5 years. She knew that he was in decline. His whole cabinet knew that he was in decline. Barack Obama knew that. They all covered it up. They all covered it up until George Clooney suddenly got the go ahead to spill the beans. And, it's his wife who's against Biden's stance on Israel anyway. So there could be more to that even than we're initially aware. So, yeah, I do think that that's certainly possible that they did that, because at any point in the past 3.5 years, they could have invoked Article, what is it, the 25th Amendment, and said, actually, it turns out that Biden has advanced dementia and he's not able to lead the nation, because they all knew that it was true. And if you listen to Tucker Carlson, he said that he knew that way before, because a friend of Biden's sister had said that they were all very disappointed that he was running despite his advanced decline. So this is a real concern. And it does seem like they were ready and waiting for this. I started to get nervous after the June 27th debate, which was so bad for Biden and where Trump performed so well. But the takeaway was that Biden, was in decline. And there was that really fascinating moment where Biden said something totally nonsensical. And Trump said, I don't know what he's talking about there, and I don't think he does either. And Trump was definitely speaking for the entire American public at that moment, because we were all really concerned. As an American, seeing your president that impaired is terrifying. This is our country, right? This is our home. We don't want it to be led by someone who is incapable of stringing a sentence together like that. But the takeaway ended up being Biden's mental state. And you saw right away the push to get him out. And that push must have been there already. It couldn't have just been on a dime. And watching Biden fight to retain his presidency, all of us being aware that he could barely function, was also really scary. I mean, all of us can think of perhaps elderly relatives who fight to maintain their cognitive abilities in the face of that decline that we all will face one day. So it was really scary. And you saw just how quickly they turned on him. And Biden did say something honest, which was that the elites were trying to force him out. The elites did force him out. The elites of his own party. And these are the same elites in his party who have been criticizing his position on Israel for the past, since October, saying, that the Palestinian cause is greater or what have you. So yeah, I mean, I think it certainly could have been part of the plan C, that they had going, because they were definitely ready for it. Kamala Harris was ready for it. It looks like she's had a little bit of a makeover. She's trying to avoid the word salad in her recent speeches to sororities, which are, of course, very important for her to do, because that's an attempt to shore up the Black female vote. And you can even hear that, probably it's horrible to say this, and I'm sure it's very racist, but the way that she speaks in front of Black sororities is different from the way that she speaks in other places. She definitely changes her demeanor, to be more of a sister to those women.
Yeah, I've noticed that. Trump pointed out something interesting. He said, that he feels like this has been a fraudulent race because he's spent
He's right.
hundreds of millions of dollars going up against Joe Biden, only to now have to go up against Kamala Harris and start over. He feels like, wow, what a waste of money. I was lied to. The American people were lied to. I'm not sure that he can ever rectify that, but I thought it was a good point. Why do you think Obama has worked so hard to get Biden out, but hasn't publicly endorsed Kamala Harris?
This is interesting. We mentioned Jack Posobiec earlier, and I recently watched an interview with him, with Tucker Carlson, where they were talking about this exact same thing. And the fascinating thing that Jack said was that Obama isn't going to endorse Kamala; he's going to endorse the process. So if he steps out and endorses the candidate, that's one thing. But if he comes out and he says, "This is a great process. This is exactly how democracy works. What we do is when our guy is impaired, we just put in whoever we want. And that's not elitist, everyone. That's democracy. That's not top down. That's grassroots." Then everyone's just going to believe it and they're going to buy into it because Obama is still the god of the Democrat Party. And Joe Biden was just an extension of Obama's presidency, and Kamala would be a further extension of Obama's presidency. So if Kamala's installed as president, and I don't think that she would be reasonably elected, but I do think that given the way this has played out so far, this is more of an installation. This is a continuation of the Obama legacy. And that's more important to him than anything else. Even think about how he was talking, or how people have been talking about Biden stepping away. They talk about his legacy. They talk about securing his legacy, right? There was even a comment in one article that said, if Biden doesn't step away from the race, then his presidential library is suddenly going to be in question. Who thinks that, he's not going to get a library after that, because that's all based on donations and what have you anyway. But the real question is, and the one that nobody is asking is, a lot of people are asking it, but we're not seeing in the New York Times anyway. If Biden is not fit to serve in November, how is he fit to serve until November? It doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't make any sense that the American people aren't wise to this, right? If Biden can't run, then what's he doing in office now? What is he doing? He's hopped up on cold medicine. Who knows what's going on with these phone calls? We're supposed to see him at 8:30 tonight from the Oval Office. Okay, but what's he doing? Why is he there? They should install Kamala now if that's what they're going to do, so that she can run on her record. Give her a record to run on for the next 4 months. If they think that she's who should lead us in January, don't they think that she should start now? And it is unfair. It's unfair to the American public. It's unfair to the Republican campaign to say, we're going to just do a little quick bait and switch because we don't think that we can beat you with our guy as it is right now. She has no record. And everything that has been reported that was her job for the past 4 years, well, that wasn't even really her job. So you can't judge her on that. You can now judge her on nothing. They're just going to come out and say that if you don't like her, you're racist. And that's going to be their whole campaign. If you don't like Kamala Harris, you're racist. Even Joy Reid said it the other day. She said, if you're a person of color and you don't vote for Kamala Harris, then you're crazy. And it reminds you of the conversation that Joe Biden had in 2020, where he told, who was it? Charlemagne, was it
Charlemagne.
yeah, he told Charlemagne, if you're black and you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. He said that, and he got elected somehow. That's just mad. Like, that's just madness.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. I thought, Joy Reid is always complaining that blacks are mistreated and second-class citizens, but then she demands people vote based on skin color versus content of character or based on track record or based on policy. It's just no, it's got to be based on skin color. So they say one thing out of one side of their mouth, one thing out of the other side. Kamala Harris has only been the presumptive nominee for a few days, and she's already broken the law by taking over Joe Biden's donations, a clear violation of the federal election laws. However, NPR, a taxpayer-funded media company, is saying it's okay to break the law in this case in order to beat Donald Trump, and then just deal with the fallout later. You need that money. Do you think that will actually be what happens? Do you think they're just going to say, screw it, in order to beat Donald Trump, the modern day Hitler? We're going to break the law, steal this money from the donors, and go after? Or is the FEC going to actually enforce this law?
Yeah, so that NPR story was insane. They said, just break the law now and deal with the fines later. And you imagine someone saying that to Hillary Clinton about the Steele dossier, and then she only got fined, what, $8,000 for it? And Trump was brought up on 34 counts of the same thing and ended up, I mean, he didn't face prison time, but he was convicted on felonies for something that Hillary Clinton paid $8,000 for. It was the exact same thing. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that the FEC is not going to do anything until they are forced to do something. I think that the Trump campaign is bringing legal action. No one's going to pay any attention to that, even though they ought to, because this is blatantly illegal. You even had the FEC chair saying, this is pretty complicated. It doesn't seem reasonable that you can just take money from donors for one candidate and then suddenly bait and switch and give that money to a different candidate. That seems, I don't know, fraudulent to do that. That seems like a totally unacceptable way to treat your donors, but I think they're going to do it anyway. I think she's going to spend the $240 million. She's going to spend the additional donations that she got, and then once she's in charge, the FEC isn't going to do anything anyway, because they're going to be like, water under the bridge. No one wants to do the work. No one wants to really backtrack and do the work, except for Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, and Fonnie Willis. They're the only ones, and Jack Smith, right? They're the only ones who really want to go out there and start doing some digging. And as soon as it comes time to look at what the Democrats are doing, no one wants to do anything about it. We couldn't even get a Republican House majority to hold Merrick Garland in inherent contempt. What is that about? That's just insane. The man lied. He flouted a congressional subpoena. He claimed executive privilege. He did all of these things that Steve Bannon is currently serving 4 months in a federal prison for himself. But Garland is nothing's gonna happen, and the FEC isn't gonna do anything. They're toothless and they don't seem to care. Yeah, I think they're gonna get away with that one.
Yeah. I complain about the Republican Party a lot, and it's for these very things. They impeached Donald Trump before they had evidence. Mm-hmm. And the Republicans are like, well, let's go find every possible thing and then hold a vote on whether we should do it, and then hold another vote on whether that vote mattered. They had this guy, they had the charges, they had the authority, but they are feckless. They are weak. They don't do anything. It's really disgusting to me, some of the weak leadership within the Republican Party. And yet, they're the party that we have in order to beat back leftist ideology at times. But one thing, speaking of people who have kind of shifted, I wanted to talk to you about something that Elon Musk wrote on Twitter. He said, the Democratic Party goal is to disenfranchise the U.S. citizen by importing as many illegal immigrants as possible. Given the massive influx of illegals from every country on earth, 2024 will probably be the last election actually decided by U.S. citizens. What are your thoughts on Elon Musk's comments?
I think it's absolutely terrifying and baffling that that we've let it get to this point. You know, conservatives in this country basically say, you live your life, I'll live my life, let's just leave each other alone. And that is certainly a sentiment I can get behind when I just want to sit on my porch and listen to the birds and drink my tea, you know, but it's not enough because you do have a Democratic Party machine that is working incredibly hard to, as Musk says, disenfranchise American voters, and they're doing it all over the country. You have state after state bringing up laws saying, you know what, we can't allow illegal immigrants to vote. And then you have federally elected lawmakers saying that's racist. It's racist to do that, but it's not legal for these people to vote. And they're being given ballot forms anywhere. They're given access to the ballot box. There are even plenty of cities in the U.S. where illegal immigrants are allowed to, not illegal immigrants, but immigrants, non-citizens, right, green card holders, are allowed to vote in local elections. New York City was trying to push this through. I don't know if they eventually did, and some other cities as well, like DC. But I do think that that is part of the goal, because otherwise, why would they have fought so hard to import millions and millions of immigrants over the past few years, complaining that Congress should do something, knowing that Congress can't agree on anything, overturning Trump's executive orders that were closing the border? I mean, think about it. In 2020, in Trump's last year in office, I think it was 480,000 illegal immigrants crossed the U.S.-Mexico border. 480,000. That's it. Less than 500,000 crossed the border. Now what is it? I mean, do we even have a count? It's like well over 2 million, you know, who are crossing the border. And they're not being made to wait for their asylum cases outside of the country. Anyone is being given asylum. The asylum case process. Anyone is being given access to the asylum process. I talked to an immigration attorney in Florida who said that most people, when their asylum cases come up, are not actually found to be eligible for asylum. Most of them are just not. So DHS knows this. They're letting everyone in anyway. They're giving them work permits after what, like 180 days. They're giving them all kinds of freebies, free cell phones, all kinds of things, immigration attorneys, right? Like all of this stuff, they're just being given access to this at our expense, and at the expense of our democracy, and at the expense of our voting rights. I don't think that there's anything racist in saying that only Americans should vote. Americans come in all shapes and sizes and colors and languages and ethnicities and everything. We're all Americans. What we have in common is that we get to vote, and immigrants do not. And that's just how it has to be. If you want to vote in this country, you have to work really hard to become a citizen. It's a whole huge process. I've had friends who've gone through that. It's you know, lengthy and expensive, and there's lots of paperwork, and you have to qualify in all of these different areas. Why are people not being subjected to that at the US Mexico border? There's even going to the Biden administration's own rules, right? If you're an immigrant, a legal immigrant to this country, you have to get vaccinated against COVID. That's like part of the rules. If you're going for, you know, a visa, like a permanent visa or residency, you have to make sure you have to like go get COVID vaccinated if you're not already. Illegal immigrants do not have to do that. They're just caught and released. Here's your asylum date for 2027. We'll see ya. Here's your free cell phone. Please don't ditch it in the gutter so that we can't find you. Okay, just hang on to that. And that's what's going on. I mean, even the killer of Lake and Riley in Georgia, that nursing student, he had applied for asylum.
Wow. But was he vaccinated? That's what I
No,
care about
he
most.
wasn't. He definitely wasn't.
Oh gosh. Oh, yeah, it's kind of hypocritical, right? They force all these people out of the military because they don't want an experimental you know, medical treatment that now turns out may hurt you more than help you, from all the data I read. And yet the country can be absolutely flooded with illegals that even have different diseases, right? Like, the thing that's crazy to me is, like, I wouldn't go to Colombia and think that I could vote for their elected officials. I wouldn't go to China and think that I would be able to vote. but you can come to America and vote. Like, it's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. And yet it's happening. It's happening all the time around us. All right. I wanted to ask you a final question. I appreciate you coming on. Do you think voters, I guess I should say Democrats or independent voters, do you think that they care at all that Kamala Harris was a major player in the cover up of Joe Biden's mental health? The fact that we had a president with dementia, unable to fully fulfill his duties, that bothers me a lot. But I don't know. Do you think that that will bother anyone else, that she played a major role in this cover up?
I think that bothers people who aren't going to vote for Kamala anyway.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to bother the people who just hate Trump and can't look at his policies, can't look at his program. I think with Trump, he has such a large personality, and that has turned a lot of people off. But personalities aren't really the important thing in a presidency. It really doesn't matter if you want to hang out with the guy, although based on some of these recent golf videos, I do think playing golf with Trump looks like it would be a lot of fun. So I think they're wrong about that too, probably. But I think that a lot of people are going to have some cognitive dissonance about that. They're going to say that maybe she didn't know, or they're just going to ignore it, or they're going to say, oh, Biden only started to decline on June 27th in the moments before the debate. They're going to come up with all kinds of reasons why it's okay and it doesn't matter and it's not her fault and we just need to move forward anyway. And as Kamala Harris says, we need to look to what can be, unburdened by what might have been. So they're going to be unburdened by the facts, by her lack of record, by her lies. They're just going to be unburdened by that.
Yeah. Well, as our mutual friend Jack Posobiec said on the Tucker Carlson show, they don't care that Biden had dementia. They care that we found out that he has dementia. And I've been saying that he has dementia since around July of 2020. I recognized it in just the way that he was behaving and couldn't recall details. Suddenly they said, oh, bless this guy's heart, he has a stutter. He never had that before.
He never had a stutter before.
Like it was all just
70s.
these. Yeah, it was just all these little things. Then you start seeing articles where it's like, do we really need a president anymore? It's really a body of people that run the country. And it's like just these little excuses and justifications for weak leadership gets on my nerves, because I want a great America. I want an America that dominates, an America that strives for excellence. That's the America I still believe in and behave in society as if that's the America. But, it's starting to feel like that's not the way that most people think, which is discouraging. Libby, if people want to follow you online, where can I push traffic? How can they follow you?
You can find me on Twitter or whatever, at Libby Emmons. And you can check out all the great work we're doing at the postmillennial.com and humanevents.com. And I actually just launched a newsletter if you want to sign up and hear from me every day. It's what is it? It's the postmillennial.com/Libby, I believe.
Okay.
And people can sign up.
Okay. I will put those direct links down below. It's so nice to meet you. Keep up the good work. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much, Stephen.